Hey folks, Klutch here, and day 2 of FarmCon has come to an end. It's been wrapped up. We got a bunch of new information to go over today. Couple of things, the major points that we need to talk about. We got more of an in-depth look into the production chains, which is kind of cool to see. There's a lot of information to go over here. Also, we got some information, of course, on our new graphical engine, on how that's all going to work. And lastly, guys, the other big information, we got gameplay. We got gameplay footage. We've actually seen someone play Farm Sim 22. So let's start off with the graphical changes for Farming Simulator 22. What do we get to take a look at? Well, parallax occlusion culling. We've talked a little bit about this in the past and showing off how it's going to make things look better. Give it that 3D look that we're really looking forward to seeing. Look, nice little demo. We got to see a little bit about this on the ground textures on the equipment itself. Also, the other big thing is the shadow mapping now. Shadow mapping and distance, view distance for the shadow mapping. You can see on one of the footages they showed, the distance for the shadows you're going to see on the trees, even in the distance, just make it look more lifelike. Very cool feature here. Now, there was 2 other features that were quickly mentioned during this tech demo, guys. It was regards to, well, AI and pedestrian features, which we didn't get much more information on. So hoping to hear more tomorrow potentially on that as well. New unannounced multiplayer features. Any thoughts on what that could be? So from here, we moved into the actual gameplay footage for Farm Sim 22, which was very cool to see, of course. The very first footage we've seen of actual gameplay footage, and there was actually a lot to go over on this. So we're gonna just kind of start rambling some facts off that came off in this video. You know what? Put your comments down below on anything you guys missed, anything that you thought was cool, anything you thought was, why did they do that? Put it down in the comments below. First of all, first thing we've kind of seen a little bit in some of the screenshots, a crop texture redesign, foliage redesign. So it looks a lot more lifelike. Even the ground textures for some of the foliage as well is a lot better than what we've seen in Farm Sim 19. And to go along with that, we have a new harvesting animation, both for the straw swath as well as for the header animation. The header animation is kind of cool as well, but the straw swath is really what looks good. It's got like a 3D look to it, more of a cone almost, instead of just the 2D plane. Now, since we're talking more about the crop textures themselves, guys, the crops actually, when they get chopped, for instance, the straw swath, it gets chopped into the ground. You can still see that in the ground, the way it looks. It looks very cool. Nice look, nice addition there. Now, when we're talking about crops as well, there's actually wind now in the game, and it changes. It's not just a steady one directional. It's actually going to change directions. It's going to change speed and intensity, and you can actually kind of see it in the crops. You can see the waves of the wind go through your fields, which very cool looking. Now, they also spoke briefly about the header height control, which is a new feature for Farming Sim 22. It's going to allow the header to adjust to the ground height. Now, it will also adjust side to side. So if you're going sideways down a hill, for instance, on the Alpine map, we'll be able to adjust and take that into account. Now, this feature may not be available on all combines, only the newer ones where it would actually come standard. On the older stuff where that wasn't really a thing, you're not going to find it there. We also got our first look at a couple of new brands to Farming Sim 19. We got Unia silos that were brought out. Also, Rudoph trailers. We got our first look at Rudoph trailers, which will be in game. We also got to learn a little bit more about the sounds that are going to be in Farm Sim 22. Of course, there is going to be more talked about that tomorrow by the sounds of things, a little more in depth. But we did get to hear the first tractor sounds. Do John Deere. Well, it sounded pretty darn good if you ask me. But more so, they did a bit of a tech demo on one of the Rudoph trailers unloading. And you know what? It sounds authentic. The hydraulic cylinder that was used to push up the tank and then drop back down, you can hear it as each sleeve sets into place. A very good little tech demo. It really showed off the sound effects that are going to be coming from Farm Sim 22. And since we're speaking about sounds, we should mention engine sounds for a manual transmission sounded pretty good. And let's talk about manual transmissions. This is huge. So the big problem, of course, with manual transmissions in tractors is there's so many different variations on this. You can't just say, yeah, every tractor has a 4-speed transmission into it and be done with it. You're gonna have to make things a little bit different depending on which tractor you have. So they come up with a system to either have, well, you can drive it as an automatic like we already have, or you can use manual mode. And it sounds like that can change depending exactly on which tractor you're driving and what brand it is, all that fun stuff. This is cool to see. We're gonna get some manual transmissions base game Farm Sim 22. From here, we went on into production chains and we asked a bunch of questions on this. We got a bunch of answers on production chains. Number 1, you can place down your own production buildings. So you were not limited to ones that are placed on the map. You can actually go and place your own. Well, similar to what we have with global companies. So there you go. So if you want to place down your own, you're more than able to. If you want to make the pathing a little bit simpler so you don't have to travel all the way across the map, you can always pay and make your own production chains closer to your farm. We got our first look at the production chains menu, which looks very clean. In fact, you know what? All the menu system all have like a light blue tinge. Our updated HUD looks all like a light blue. Everything looks very clean and crisp. The production chains menu is no different. We've got, you can see what kind of products we have on our left, the production that's going to be happening in the middle, and on the right you're going to see more information specifically to that building itself. On some of the buildings in the production chains, well, you get to change the status. Now beforehand, you may remember with global companies we could turn off, turn on certain productions. Of course, that's still a thing, but now we can also change it to what mode it is. So for instance, we could send things to be either stored, which would mean we'd be picking it up and then driving it to wherever it needed to go from there. We can send it to actually sell, so you can put the product in and just automatically sell it. Or you can send it to distribute. So if it's, for instance, the flour mill and you need to send something to the bakery, you can tell the flour mill, you know what, you go ahead and you take care of that. You distribute that for me to the bakery. I'm not going to deal with it, but it's going to show up down at the bakery, and then the bakery can deal with it at that point in time. This is just going to give us a bunch more options, of course. We've talked a lot about global companies / production chains in previous videos. Make sure you guys, if you want to learn more information about production chains, go check out the last video on this. We've gone over this a little bit more in depth, but we got some more information on how they will all work. I love to see this mode option change. You can quickly just select on each one how you want them to behave with what products. And we also got another sneak peek on another product that's going to be available. So they looked a little bit about the bakery and some of the products the bakery can create. Well, of course, bread, very simple. Simply just wheat has to be brought into it. Simple, not a problem at all. But they also showed cakes, which sounds like it may be the more complex or the most complex product available out of the production chains. It required 5 different products. We needed flour, we needed sugar, milk, eggs, butter, and strawberries to make cakes out of the bakery. So what about these strawberries? Also, they mentioned greenhouses will be a thing in Farm Sim 22. Greenhouses must be base game in Farm Sim 22. We don't have exact products that the greenhouses will be able to make us yet, but we know about strawberries. That's one. We'll see what else we could have for options. I mean, it could be pretty much anything. There's a ton of options now. I can't wait to see more about greenhouses and how they all work. So fingers crossed we get something before the end of tomorrow. And our last little bit about the production chains, guys. For multiplayer for production chains, well, there's no limitations now. Just because you place down a building doesn't mean somebody else can't use it. So if you place down a bakery, somebody from another farm can go ahead and use that bakery and have the same options you would to it. So it's a cost benefit for everybody to be able to utilize these as they see fit. There's no more locking it down to whoever built the buildings. It keeps on moving along for everybody in multiplayer games. Now we moved on to a section with more of the back end stuff for Farming Sim 22. So for instance, prices on products. How will that work? It sounds like it's going to be very similar to how it works currently in Farm Sim 19. As one person sells a bunch of product of one type, that product price is probably going to change and be lowered. Well, other products may go up because they haven't been sold in time. Will work the same way in multiplayer as well. You can affect the market depending on how much you sell of a certain product. Of course, we got a brand new look at the new case that's in game, and it's 3D tracks. In fact, they even mentioned that everything that is tracked in game will have 3D tracks. 3D tracks are now officially everything in Farm Sim 22. Not just one or two things. Everything will have 3D tracks in Farm Sim 22. And then from there, we looked at the different ground textures depending on states of field, from cultivating to plowing, all that fun stuff. Now, you'll notice that we've got some different textures in the ground because, well, the straw swath has, well, chopped up some straw. Now we're cultivating it. You're still going to be able to see some of that swath still in the ground. So what they're saying is that the cultivator, the disc harrower, the plow will all take into account what was on that field beforehand, and then it'll change the state depending on it. So you're going to see a little bit of a different visualization of the field depending on what was in the field before you decided to, well, do whatever you did to it. So it's not always going to be the same. It will change depending on exactly what state it was in beforehand. And also taking that into account, guys, weeds will grow if you have weeds on. We'll see about weeds. We haven't learned much more about the weed system, but weeds will grow faster depending on what field state it is in. So for instance, if it's plow right now, guess what? You know what field? Those weeds may grow a little bit quicker. If it's just cultivated, it'll be different. If you have a crop planted, it'll be a totally different state. And then we even got a first look at the class Zurion saddle truck with the Calico slurry tank and spreader off the back of this. Now, we knew a little bit about this. Of course, this is a pre-order bonus, so make sure you guys go down below, click on the link pre-order Farm Sim 22. But we got a first look at how the slurry system is going to look and work. It looks fantastic. There's a couple of things from this short demo we got that I thought was somewhat interesting. First things, guys, the fertilizer levels on the slurry. You can actually do double activation rates. So if you want to, for instance, in base Farm Sim, you need to fertilize your field twice in order to maximize the fertilization of a field. Well, with slurry, at least, we know we can go through the field, and activate double activation, which will slow down the speed which you can fertilize. However, you're going to get both things fertilized at the same time. You're not going to have to do the field twice, you'll do it just once. Of course, this will mean you will use double the amount of fertilizer, I'm assuming the double amount of slurry, but it's going to save you time where you're not going to have to go back into that field later on. Especially if you have crop destruction on it, that always causes problems, right? Also, we learned a little bit, well, we saw a little bit about a license plate. You can see we have a license plate on the back. This is a North American license plate on the back of the Kloss. And they've also mentioned later on that the license plate will be fully customizable, minus profanities, of course. And to wrap this section up, we got our first look at the Horman animal pens. And you know what? One of the nice features about this, guys, they showed out, oh, they're actually interactive. So for the first time in Farm Sim, we have interactive animal pens. We can open gates, open doors. In fact, most of the buildings, it sounds like, will be a place to park inside. We'll be able to move our equipment inside to a lot of them. But the Horman animal pen specifically, they've showed off how the doors operate. There's several different areas, which all of them can be interacted with. So that there was the end of the official FarmCon itself. Now, they went through a whole section with a ton of questions, actually, from the community, guys. And you know what? Let's just quickly go through some of the highlights. There's a bunch here we need to go through. So of course, one of the bigger things that people are always asking about mods for Farm Sim 22 from Farm Sim 19, is there going to be a change in process? It sounds like that process is going to be exactly the same. No difference there. The mods that we put in for Farm Sim 19, how you process them and how they were improved, same idea for Farm Sim 22. Character creation. This sounds like it was always something that was meant to be upgraded or increased in Farm Sim 19, or maybe they expected more from it, just never got around to it. Now it sounds like this in Farm Sim 22, there's a lot more options. Haven't seen much more details on this. Of course, we've analyzed some of this in several other videos and looked at some of the other pictures and kind of came up with our own conclusions on this. There's also a new sorting system of sort for mods. We'll see how that all works, but they also talked about starter packs. I'm extremely excited about this. I don't know how you guys feel, but I am kind of excited about starter packs. I always struggle about trying to figure out which equipment I want to start with. Now, of course, this is going to be base game equipment, so it's only going to go so far. However, they're going to have starter packs, and you're going to be able to start with certain pieces of equipment depending on what type of farm you want to run. So if you say you just want to run a regular grain farm and plant wheat, well, there's going to be a starter pack that's just built for you. However, you want to say you want to do a potato farm, there's going to be a starter pack for potato farm. You want to do maybe a cattle ranch, there's going to be a starter pack for that. Don't know if exactly how many there are or exactly which way this is going to go, how many we're going to expect, but it says starter packs are going to be a thing for, well, especially to help out new players in Farm Sim 22. Of course, Lizard branding is still a thing as well for all equipment that they have in game they don't have licensing for or don't really have a product that actually exists for. The Lizard branding is still a thing. And also not much new information on the landscaping tool as of yet. We'll find out hopefully some more info in the next day or so. Also, they talked a little bit about the build mode. I don't know what that is yet. Hopefully we find something quick on that. Now, console players, unfortunately, there's still not a great answer as for like hazard lights. Hazard lights was always a big question for console players. Sounds like hazard lights are still not quite a thing for Farm Sim 22. It may be possible for newer versions, newer console versions to have hazards. As of right now, not currently implemented, still working towards that for maybe new console versions. That's all we can say there. And also, slot counts are still a thing. I know I thought we were past slot counts, but apparently we are not past slot counts. Now, they did go into detail and talk a little bit more about the differences between, well, PC and console. Will there be a various different feature set between any of them? And the answer is no. All the features that are available for PC will be available for console version, current gen and last gen console version. So features will be the same across the board. The only difference from previous versions, the previous console versions to current, is that the last gen may have a less of a graphical fidelity. It sounds like 4K may be available for current gen consoles at least. We also had some questions on contracts, as in the CGI trailer showed off some snow plowing. And there were some questions, could snow plowing be contracted? That's something that works in some of the mod maps. Why can't it work in Farm Sim? Well, currently we don't have an answer on that. It's still something they're working towards that may be possible, but nothing currently set up for that yet. Back over to modding, the animal models themselves, they are still technically protected, so we're not going to be seeing any animal mods that are directed from Giants at least. So that is still currently under protected, but it's something they talked about they may look into, but let's not hold our breath on that one. However, kind of big news, and at least in my book, the production chains will be available and open to modders as well. So modders will be able to work on and create their own custom production chains and release them for all platforms. All platforms will be able to take mods for production chains. So also, speaking about production chains, they also did confirm that it will be a forestry related production chains. like a carpentry shop, it sounds like. That's kind of cool. I like that as much as I like forestry. And they also went in and leaked possibly something that wasn't talked about yet, guys. We're going to be having different breeds of livestock, different, at least cattle. I'm assuming that all will have different breeds, similar to what Seasons has now. So they talked a little bit about Holstein versus Angus cows and what your expectations are for getting returns out of them. One's better for milk, one's better for, well, selling off, of course. And they're all going to have different requirements for feeding as well. So take that into account, different times to sell, all that good stuff. So they're going to be a little bit different, a little more complex as well. However, there was one other note that they talked about, which I was a little bit disappointed about. There'll be no grazing, unfortunately, in Farm Sim 22. Grazing is not a thing, which is interesting because Seasons in Farm Sim 19 had grazing during summer months, of course. It doesn't sound like there's any grazing happening in Farm Sim 22, at least as of right now. Now, on that note, the question was actually more related to moving livestock from field to field to take care of grazing. Now, they said that grazing wasn't really a thing. Grazing is not available in base game, so that's not something you're gonna have to worry about. However, they did mention that you can fence off areas to make your own fields for horses specifically. I don't know if that means more for other livestock. Can you make a fenced off area for your cattle and just be able to slap them in there and put them in? I have no idea if that's an option or not, but they kind of made it sound like, at least for horses, that's going to be a thing. You can fence off an area and put some of your livestock in there, and that'll stay in that area, which is great to see. I would love to be able to make my own fields, that's for sure. Now, it sounds like the physics engine itself for many things is still being worked on. I was hoping to hear more on, well, pallets, for example, with all the production chain stuff on. I'm really hoping that the physics for pallets is increased and better, just because of some of the issues we ran in with pallets, of course, in Farm Sim 19, with Farm Sim 22, with all the emphasis on production chains and pallets. We would hope that that's going to be upgraded, but there was not really much information posted on that. Faster sync time sounds like it will be a thing as well for multiplayer games, for everyone who does multiplayer. Faster syncing will be a thing. Hopefully we see more about this in the next couple days. It doesn't sound like we're going to be able to get rid of the synchronizing simulator completely, but some syncing should be made faster. Fingers crossed on that. And also, downloads for mods. So this has been a feature that's been requested by a lot of people. It sounds like we're going to have a new button put onto your loading screen, which will give you an option to just simply download all the mods that are in a server session. So if you have a multiplayer game you want to join in, you can just say download all the mods I'm missing, and they will automatically download, provided all those mods are from the mod hub. As long as those mods are from the mod hub, you can download them right then and there. Of course, off-site mods, that's totally different. So there you go. You've got a bunch of new multiplayer options there. That makes things a little bit easier. So folks, there you go. That is all the new information that was posted from FarmCon Day 2. A lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of new information. Good to see some gameplay footage. I hope you guys enjoyed. Of course, we're going to be posting more stuff about FarmCon, so make sure you guys go reach down below, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing. Hope you have a fantastic day, folks. We'll catch you later. This is Klutch, over and out.